want to predict. I would have said that would have been one of my early ones. I did 8 peace deals of countries, including in India, Pakistan. You could even go, in fact, they're coming here in a week or two, go to the Congo and Rwanda. That was 10 million people dead, and we worked something out on that. But so many. And the one I thought would have been, for me, because I have a very good relationship with President Putin, I thought that would have been maybe quicker. But it does take 2 to tango. And now you just see all the death. And, you know, it doesn't affect us other than the fact that we don't want to see all those people that really, it's on the other side of the ocean. It's a war that should have never happened. It did happen. I blame the person also sitting right behind this desk. This is a war that should have never happened, and it wouldn't have happened if I were president. But we're trying to save a lot of lives. They're losing 25,000 lives over the last short period of time. That's Ukrainian and Russian, and it's a shame.
What happened this president? I want to ask the mayor-elect about a House resolution just passed overwhelmingly to condemn socialism, including with 86 Democrats, all of House Dem leadership, and the minority leader, Hakeem Jeffries, despite his endorsement of you. What's your reaction to that?
I have to be honest with you, I focused very little on resolutions. Frankly, I've been focusing...
Socialism.
I understand. I think the focus is on the work at hand. I can tell you I am someone who is a democratic socialist. I've been very open about that. And I know there might be differences about ideology, but the place of agreement is the work that needs to be done to make New York City affordable. That's what I look forward to.
And I want to clarify your answer to Stephen Nelson. He asked about your comment calling the president a fascist. And your answer was, both President Trump and I have been clear about our positions and our views. Are you affirming that you think President Trump is a fascist?
I've spoken about...
That's okay. You can just say yes.
Okay. All right.
Okay. It's easier. It's easier than explaining it. I don't mind.
And Mr. President, I wanted to ask you also about this Ukraine plan.
Yeah.
President Zelensky said today that his country would risk either giving up a partner or giving up its dignity. There's been criticism that this deal...
You mean he doesn't like it?
It's unclear. He was sort of
Well,
pretending
he'll have to like it, and if he doesn't like it, then, you know, they should just keep fighting, I guess, you know.
The suggestion that he made, though, was that if he doesn't accept it, that the U.S. would pull back its support for Ukraine. Is that
Well, at some
accurate?
point, he's going to have to accept something, you know. He hasn't accepted. You remember right in the Oval Office not so long ago, I said, you don't have the cards. Don't forget, I inherited this war. I would have never, this war never would have happened. I inherited this war. And I thought he should have made a deal a year ago, 2 years ago. The ultimate deal would have been if it never started. That would have been the good deal. That could have been done too if you had the right president, but you didn't have the right president.
Mr. President, cost of living is something that you and Mr. Mamdani seem to agree on.
Right.
Democrats have run New York City for a long time, Mr. Mamdani. Do you see Democrat policy specifically as being a problem? And I'd like that to be a question that both of you could answer in New York City.
Look, I think that there are many things in our city where we have to own the responsibility of it, things that existed long before the president was the president. And those are also part of the message of our campaign, was to take on a broken politics of the past. And I ran against a number of candidates who represented different versions of that past. And what we found time and again is that working people were left behind in the politics of our city. And what we're looking to do is put those people right back at the heart of our politics so that we don't have a situation where we're in the wealthiest city in the history of the world, and yet 1 in 5 can't even afford $2.90 for a Metro card.
Mr. President,
You know, we had some interesting conversation, and some of his ideas really are the same ideas that I have. But a big thing on cost, you know, the new word is affordability. Another word is just groceries. You know, it's sort of an old-fashioned word, but it's very accurate. And they're coming down high. They were, you know, we had, both of us, we had the highest inflation in the history of our country the last 4 years under the Biden administration. And we've got inflation down now to a normal number. It's going to go even a little bit lower than that. Katie, do you have something in a bit?
Mr. President, thank you so much. Mr. Mamdani often talks about New York City being covered by international law, that they will follow international law. He doesn't often talk about the U.S. Constitution. What is your response to that?
Well, I don't know what you're referring to in terms of it could be covered by international law, local law. It's covered by a lot of laws, but it's covered by U.S. law. Are you referring to anything in particular?
He just says that they're a city that endorses and enforces international law. Is that at odds with?
No, I don't know. Would you want to respond?
Yeah, I think what I've shared with the president is our desire to not only follow the laws of our own city, laws that protect New Yorkers, but also a desire for consistency in our politics across the board. And that's something that we've talked about and something that I know many New Yorkers want.
We work with ICE. We work with ICE.
We discussed ICE and New York City, and I spoke about how the laws that we have in New York City allow for New York City government to speak to the federal administration for about 170 serious crimes. The concerns that many New Yorkers have are around the enforcement of immigration laws on New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs, and most recently we're talking about a mother and her 2 children, how this has very little to do with what that is.
Mr. Mamdani,
What we did is we discussed crime, more than ICE per se. We discussed crime, and he doesn't want to see crime, and I don't want to see crime, and I have very little doubt that we're not going to get along on that issue. He wants to, and he said some things that were very interesting as to housing construction, and he wants to see houses go up. He wants to see a lot of houses created, a lot of apartments built, etc. And you know, we actually people would be shocked, but I want to see the same thing.
Mr. Mamdani, anti-Israel protesters.
Jack?
Mr. President, I want to know, one of the policies as well that Mayor-Elect Mamdani talked a number of times about on the campaign was shifting the tax burden for property taxes from what he called minority communities to white-based communities and putting more taxes on white people. I also noticed that in your acceptance speech you didn't mention anything about America or Christians or white people in general, and so I didn't know if that was one of the policies that you guys had spoken about.
We focused on affordability. We focused on the cost of living crisis. What I will say is that I am very much interested in property tax reform, because what we see right now in New York City is a system that is so inequitable that it can't even stand up in court. And the president and I spoke about the importance of not only building more housing, but also making sure that regulation of housing is something that is manageable to actually get through and not the cause of yet another weight that we see in our
But to be
city.
clear, you're continuing this idea of race-based property taxes.
No, to be very clear,
That's what you said.
no, the use of the term was a description of neighborhoods, not a description of intent.
So you intend to tax the whiter neighborhoods more?
No, we intend to create a fair property tax system because we want a New York City that is not only fair and equitable, but also one that every New Yorker can afford.
Mr. Mamdani, anti-Israel protesters
Please, go ahead.
Mr. Mamdani, anti-Israel protesters just targeted a synagogue in New York. Are you concerned about Jewish New Yorkers feeling welcome and safe in the city? And President Trump, you've threatened to cut off federal funding to New York City. What policies would prompt you to do that? Would that be city-run grocery stores? Would it be something else?
Well, I think if we didn't get along, whether it's cut off or just make it a little bit difficult or not give as much, we want to see, I use the term, we don't want good money going after bad. And we don't want that to happen. I don't think that's going to happen. I did say that, subject to what policies are being said. We had a meeting today that actually surprised me. He wants to see no crime. He wants to see housing being built. He wants to see rents coming down, all things that I agree with. Now, we may disagree how we get there. The rent coming down, I think one of the things I really gleaned very much today, he'd like to see him come down, ideally, by building a lot of additional housing.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate way. He agrees with that, and so do I. But if I read the newspapers and the stories, I don't hear that. But I heard him say it today, and I think that's a very positive step. No, I don't expect. I expect to be helping him, not hurting him. A big help, because I want New York City to be great. Look, I love New York City. It's where I come from. I spent a lot of years there. Now I'm right here. We took a big setback with the mayor that we had, Dave de Blasio. I thought it was a tremendous setback for the city. I think this mayor can do some things that are going to be really great.
Mr. President, Mr. President.
Yeah, okay, how about you? Go ahead,
Thank you, Mr.
please.
President. You're a billionaire. You have a different address nowadays than you used to, but you used to call New York City home. Would you feel comfortable living in New York City under a Mamdani administration?
Yeah, I would. I really would. Especially after the meeting. Absolutely.
What makes you comfortable?
We agree on a lot more than I would have thought. I think I want him to do a great job, and we'll help him do a great job. He may have different views, but in many ways, we were discussing when Bernie Sanders was out of the race, I picked up a lot of his votes, and people had no idea. because he was strong on not getting ripped off in trade and lots of the things that I've practiced and been very successful on. Tariffs, a lot of things. Bernie Sanders and I agreed on much more than people thought. And when he was put out of the race, I think quite unfairly, if you want to know the truth, many of the Bernie Sanders voters voted for me. And I felt very comfortable, frankly, in seeing that and saying that. And, you know, it just turned out to be a statistical truth. But no, I feel very comfortable. I would feel very, very comfortable being in New York, and I think much more so after the meeting. Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a question for you, but a very quick one for
Please.
the mayor. Why did you fly here? Aren't trains greener?
I will use every form of transit, and I want to make sure that they're all affordable in New York City, and that's why making buses fast and free is a centerpiece of our campaign.
Did you?
There is a bus that goes.
Well, but I know, but it'd be fluid. That's a lot quicker too. You know, I mean, he's working very hard. For him to be, that's a very long drive. I'll stick up for you. You know, the plane takes you 30 minutes, and driving takes you a
And
long
Mr.
time.
President, I was wondering if you could clear up some confusion around a Washington Post report. There was this explosive report that the Coast Guard is no longer going to characterize swastikas and nooses as hate symbols. DHS called that a lie and fake news. Can you clear up?
I don't know anything about it. When was this written?
I think yesterday.
Well, look, the Coast Guard's an incredible group of people. I know them very well. We just ordered a lot of new Coast Guard cutters, beautiful, the most magnificent ship. They look like yachts with lots of guns on them. So I don't know. I haven't seen any report like that, but certainly we want them to remain a great force, and they are.
Mr. President, and you did the piece in all the 9 months
Yes.
around the world. I would like to ask Mr. Mamdani, you've accused the U.S. government of committing genocide in Gaza while President Trump was working on peace. Why that?
I've spoken about the Israeli government committing genocide, and I've spoken about our government funding it. And I shared with the president in our meeting about the concern that many New Yorkers have of wanting their tax dollars to go towards the benefit of New Yorkers and their ability to afford basic dignity. And what we see right now is we're in the 9th consecutive year of more than 100,000 school children being homeless in our city. And there's a desperate need not only for the following of human rights, but also the following through on the promises we've made New Yorkers. And I appreciated the meeting we had and the work that we can do.
Do you agree that President Trump did do a peace and work hard to make the peace? Because he worked hard to do the peace in the Middle East and everywhere. Do you agree with that?
I appreciate all efforts towards peace, and I shared with President Trump that when I spoke to Trump voters on Hillside Avenue, including one of whom was a pharmacist that spoke about how President Trump's father actually went to that pharmacy not too far from Jamaica Estates, that people were tired of seeing our tax dollars fund endless wars. And I also believe that we have to follow through on the international human rights, and I know that still today those are being violated, and that continues to be work that has to be done no matter where we're speaking of.
Mr.
Thank you, Mr. President. Do you view the mayor-elect as the true leader of the Democrat Party? And do you think Leader Schumer's and Leader Jeffries, have to follow his lead?
Well, look, I hope they have great leaders. This is a man that right now I think is focused on New York City. I really think he has a chance to do a great job. We're going to help him, but I really think he has a chance to do a great job. But I'll let you answer that. You consider yourself the leader of the Democrats. I think it's more appropriate for him.
I consider myself the next mayor of New York City, and I keep my horizons firmly on New York City, and I appreciate the meeting with the president, which focused again on the 5 boroughs and whether New Yorkers could afford to live there.
By the way, being the mayor of New York City is a big deal.
Absolutely.
I always said, one of the things I would love to be someday is the mayor of New York City. Being the mayor of New York, and especially now, because I think you're at really a turning point, one way or the other. It could go great, or it can go in a different direction. And I think you really have a chance to make it great. I appreciate it.
Mr. President, you say you love New York City. Mr.